Good morning, everyone. We are continuing our series of Merging with Śiva lessons, starting a new lesson today. Chapter 8, The Clear White Light. Interesting origin of this talk. Handwritten by Gurudeva during hours of seclusion on August 13th, 1967, at Carl Jung's lakeside Casa Eranos villa on Lago Maggiore during the 1967 Inner Search travel study program in Ascona, Switzerland. It was at this same chalet on the large lake connecting Switzerland and Italy that Gurudeva revealed Shum the language of meditation the following year. So that was 1968. This is 1967. And then some history from Guru Chronicles in the 1967 era. Gurudeva's early training of the monks in the Virginia City Monastery. Once, when trying to teach the monks how to control the heat of the body, he saw they were not getting it. So he moved the 6 a.m. meditations outside. Not too bad if it's here, right? It was winter, and the high mountain snows drifted deep, so deep that in some years one could walk out a second-story door onto the ground. That year was particularly cold. Each morning the monks followed the Guru through the newly fallen snow to an open spot where they meditated together. They had only their robes and a woolen blanket to keep them warm, and these were pitiably inadequate. As the morning wind swept snow and frozen air past their defenses, they sat in full lotus, shivering and seeking the silence within. The Guru would then guide them to warm their bodies with their minds, to bring up the heat of the body, which in his Shum language is called Alikaishum. The monks worked with feverish intensity to learn the art the Guru had put before them. This was no longer an exercise, it was a matter of survival. After some weeks, most had learned to raise their body temperature mentally, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Such was the way of the Guru in those days. Such training was intense for all the monks as the Guru took them through the personal transformations needed, the changes in their attitudes and their relationships, the resolutions of their past. The firming up of their work habits and meditative determinations. He taught them willpower, how to accomplish their goals, how to overcome obstacles, how to turn adversity and obstacles into success. In everything they did, he asked 108%. 100%, he often repeated, is not enough. Is not what you are capable of. Under this intense scrutiny and guidance, the monks flourished in their inner and outer lives, so much so that decades later, the Guru would wonder aloud whether monks of succeeding generations would develop the same tenacity and strength as his first group had. The challenge. Then we get the text, Lesson 50, Beyond Past and Future. Whenever a man comes to the point in his evolution where he has sufficient mastery in the mind to produce things, he suffers for the lack of peace. For in his activity on the mental spheres in conceiving, planning, gathering the forces together, and finally viewing the outcome as a physical manifestation, he has exercised an intricate control over the nerve fibers of his mind. Thus caught in this pattern, he must go on producing to ensure his mental security. For should he stop for a moment, the whiplash upon his senses as the generative functions cease to be active would cause paranoid depressions, at times almost beyond repair. Quite a paragraph, huh? The man looking into the where and when of the future blending his energies with those who are also striving to evolve into a more ramified state of mind, can suffer well if he keeps going, producing, acquiring, and believing that materiality is reality. Evolution of the species takes its toll, for as man's mind evolves, he is no longer content projecting into the where and when of the material consciousness. And as he seeks some reward for peace for his efforts, he begins to look into the past for solutions, the there and then of it all. Thus finding himself born into a cross-section of awareness between past and future, having experienced both of these tendencies of the mind, causes him to reflect. Philosophy holds few answers for him. The congested mass of shoulds and don'ts he knows has proved more to the philosopher who cleared his mind on paper than to the reader who has yet to complement with inner knowing its indicated depths. Occultism is intriguing to him, for it shows that there are possibilities of expression beyond the senses he has become well accustomed to using. But again, evolution rounding his vision causes him to discard the occult symbolism, laws, and practices as another look into the past or future of the mind's depths. The idea of yoga, union through perceptive control of the flow of thought, and of the generative processes of a perceptive idea before thought is formed, is most satisfying. The cognition of the actinic process of the currents intrigues him, and he looks further into the practice of yogic techniques and finds that peace is gained through a conscious government, first of the life currents through the body, and second of the realm of ideas as they flow into thought. And while remaining the observer of it all in the eternity of the here and now, the seeker fully realizes that time, space, and causation are only indicated through holding an off-balanced consciousness of past and future. Oh, my commentary. Gurudeva has given a fascinating definition of yoga. Quote, the idea of yoga, union through perceptive control of the flow of thought. That's the first part. That's the standard definition of yoga. And then the second part, and control of the generative processes of a perceptive idea before thought is formed is most satisfying. That's the part that's unusual. Control of the generative processes of a perceptive idea before thought is formed. Oh, we have some helpful ideas in Shum. This is a word I'm not familiar with. Lita ba I, no. Try again. Lita ba'im, a complete concept from the superconscious. So that's the complete concept. That's the idea Gurudeva is talking about. A perceptive idea before thought is formed. So the Shum word, a complete concept from the superconscious. Then we get the series. Taba'im, a collection of thoughts that make a complete concept. So that's a step down. You have the complete concept before it turns into thoughts, and then it steps down into a series of thoughts. And then the second dimension, ba'im, a mixture of food items, such as for a cake. Have to have a second dimensional word in the series. So that's bringing in that idea of something exists before the thoughts, something at a higher rate of vibration when you come up with a perceptive idea. You're seeing it as a totality. And then to be able to explain it to yourself and to others, you have to break it down into a series of thoughts. Lesson 51, Capturing the Here and Now, text. The feeling and the realization of the here and now intensity of consciousness becomes intriguing to him, and he works daily on yoga techniques to strengthen psychic nerve fibers and perfect his artistry of maintaining this awareness, meaning being in the present and not pulled a lot to past and future. And of course in Shum, for that we have BC, which we all know, but I'll read it anyway because some of our viewers may not be familiar with it. BC. BC has an extension on there at the end, so it's a fourth dimensional word. Eternity of the moment felt in the middle of 3 days in the past and 3 in the future. So Gurudeva sometimes says 3, sometimes says 4, sometimes says 4.5. So, different ways of looking at it. But the idea is you don't go more than a few days into the past or a few days into the future unless there's a really good reason to do so. Unless it's a productive process. In other words, some people are constantly thinking about the past, sharing the past, constantly telling stories about the past. But it's not producing anything meaningful in the present. It's just remembering the past. Likewise, they're thinking about the future in terms of worry, possibly. And it's not producing something positive in the present. So we don't want to go outside of a few days into the past and future. We need to go there to manage our daily life. We don't want to go further than that unless it's helping us actually do something positive in the present. Oh, back to the text. Many things fall away from him as he expands his consciousness through the classical practices of meditation. He loosens the odic bonds of family and former friends. Magnetic ties to possessions and places fade out until he is alone, involved with the refined realms of mind and in the actinic flow of energies. Occasionally his awareness is brought out into a habit pattern or a concept of himself as he used to be, but viewed with his new stability and his recently found inner security of being whole, this too quickly fades. So it comes up with a new self-concept. Whenever darkness comes into the material world, this centered man is light. He sees light within his head and body as clearly as he did in former states of materialistic consciousness when looking at a glowing light bulb. While involved in inner searching some hidden laws of existence or unraveling the solution to a problem of the outer mind, he sits viewing the inner light, and the light shines through the knitted law of existence, clearly showing it in all its ramifications, as well as shining out upon the snarled problem, burning it back into proportionate component parts. Thus, becoming adept and using his newly found facilities, he begins to study the findings of others and compare them to his own. This educational playback process elucidates to his still doubting intellect the all-rightness of the happenings that occur within him. He finds that for 6,000 years men have, from time to time, walked the classical yoga path and attained enlightenment. And he begins to see that he has yet far to go, as his light often is dimmed by the pulling he experiences of the past, by the exuberance he shares with the future, and by the yet fawn-like instability of the here and now eternity he has most recently experienced. Now, in the dawn of a new age, when many men are being drawn within, it is eminently easier to attain and maintain clarity of perception through the actinic light within the body. Through the classical yoga techniques, perfecting the conscious use of the actinic willpower, the energies can be drawn inward from the outer mind and the awareness can bask in the actinic light, coming into the outer mind only at will and positively. Occasionally, young aspirants burst into inner experience, indicating a balance of intense light at a still higher rate of vibration of here and now awareness than their almost daily experience of a moon glow inner light. The dynamic vision of seeing the head and at times the body filled with a brilliant clear white light, when this intensity can be attained at will, more than often man will identify himself as actinic force flowing through the odic externalities of the outer mind, and identify it as a force of life more real and infinitely more permanent than the external mind itself. In that paragraph, Gurudev has given us two forms of inner light. The one at a lower vibration is the moon glow inner light. And then the one at the higher vibration, I'll find it here, brilliant clear white light. So we have a moon glow light and a brilliant clear white light. So in Shum we have two words. Balikana is the moon glow light. And Gurudeva gives this simple way of looking at it. Visualize a tree, then remove the tree. The light that remains is Balikana. So that's the moon glow. Then we have Ifche, clear, brilliant inner light. Ifche is experienced in the fields of the fifth and sixth dimension. So it's deeper. And that's all we have for today.